Good morning, students. Today we are going to study the topic Reproduction in Plants and Animals, chapter number 2, Reproduction. So, children, already we have studied about different life processes like respiration, excretion, nutrition, yes, transportation, that is blood circulation. So, today we'll be studying about reproduction and its types. Reproduction and its type. So, first of all, what is reproduction? So, reproduction is the process by which organisms produce more of their own kind. Yes, so think about it. Without reproduction, all life on earth would no longer exist. So, what is reproduction? Reproduction is a process by which organisms produce more of their own kind. It is the process by which organisms produce new individuals of their own kind is called as reproduction. So you can see the living organisms, they reproduce a kind of their own to keep life going. Therefore, we can say that reproduction is a process that is necessary for the continuation of species. Yes, we can also say that reproduction, it is giving birth to an offspring. Yes, so these living organisms, they reproduce a kind of their own to keep life going. So it is very necessary for the continuation of species. So there are different modes of reproduction. Yes, you can see here the modes of reproduction. Yes, the types of reproduction. So in the table you can see the modes of reproduction: asexual and sexual reproduction. Under asexual, we are going to study the asexual reproduction in animals as well as asexual reproduction in plants. So in animals, how does the asexual reproduction takes place? Yes, by what type of mode of reproduction? You can see there in animals it takes place by budding and binary fission. In plants, the reproduction takes place by spore formation, fragmentation, vegetative propagation. So one by one we are going to study about this, the mode of reproduction. So what did we study first? What is a reproduction? So reproduction is the process by which organisms produce more of their own kind, that is same kind of offsprings are getting produced. So it is very necessary for the continuation of species. So there are two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction. So under asexual reproduction in animals, they take place by budding and binary fission. In plants, the reproduction takes place, the mode of reproduction, by spore formation, fragmentation, vegetative propagation. So first of all, we'll see what is this asexual reproduction. Under the modes of reproduction, what is asexual reproduction? So it is a process by which single organism produces genetically identical offsprings. So here, when the particular organism is produced, it is the identical copy. Yes, so here the reproduction that involves only one organism, it is called as asexual reproduction. It means that during this asexual reproduction, what happens? Only one kind of parent is involved here. There is a single parent involvement. No involvement of sexes or gametes. So this type of reproduction is most common in single cell organisms like bacteria. Yes, or you can take amoeba, yeast. They reproduce by asexual reproduction, but can be found in more complex organisms as well. So what is asexual reproduction? Asexual reproduction is a process by which a single organism produces genetically. There are only one kind of parent here present, and when the particular organism is produced, it is a identical offspring. So here only one parent is involved. There is no any involvement of sex cells or gametes. Okay, so let us study about asexual in animals. So some organisms like amoeba, hydra, they reproduce asexually by binary fission and budding respectively. So first of all, we'll see binary fission in amoeba. Yes, asexual reproduction in animals. So let us see asexual reproduction in amoeba by the mode of binary fission. So in the picture you can see the amoeba, yes, which is a unicellular organism, or one more you can take paramecia. So yes, and bacteria, it also reproduces by binary fission. But let us see binary fission in amoeba, how it takes place, how they reproduce. So you can see here in the first picture, as amoeba has a nucleus at the center, is surrounded by the cytoplasm. As it is a unicellular organism, the single cell performs all the functions. So you can see the amoeba as a parent amoeba. So during binary fission, during the asexual reproduction, this parent amoeba, it is equalizes, that is two equal sized daughter cells are formed from a single parent. So there will be elongation of nucleus. So these two copies, that is daughter cells, are identical to each other as well as to the parent cell. So as soon as the elongation of nucleus takes place, they divide into two equal sized daughter cells, that is division of nucleus as well as cytoplasm, you can see, into an individual daughter cells. So one amoeba, it will divide into two equal sized daughter cells. Yes, that is the binary fission. Bi means two. Two equal sized daughter cells are formed from a single parent. So these daughter cells are identical to each other as well as to the parent cell. So you can see here the parent amoeba is dividing into two. First there will be elongation of the nucleus. As the nucleus get divided into both the equal sized daughter cells, they divide into is two equal sized daughter cells, and at the last you can see two daughter cells are separately produced. So this is the binary fission in amoeba. So asexual reproduction taking place in animals. We studied about amoeba, and the mode of asexual reproduction is binary fission. So next one, budding. Yes, budding in hydra. Asexual reproduction in animals, that is first one we saw by binary fission in amoeba. Now we are seeing about budding in hydra, how the asexual reproduction takes place by budding. So here organisms such as yeast and hydra reproduce by budding. In this form of asexual reproduction, what happens? The cell divide to form a protrusion on the surface of the body. Means these protrusions are called buds. Yes, in the picture you can see there a parent hydra. Yes, along with that the buds are forming. So these protrusions are called buds. So each bud forms a new organism. In hydra, the cell wall is made up of two layers of the cells and has a mouth with tentacles. You can see there long elongated at the apex 5 tentacles. Yes, so the parent hydra, it will reproduce. Yes, you can see there is bud formation on the surface. The cell divide to form a protrusion on the surface. These protrusions are called buds. So later what happens to that each bud? So this each bud, you can see in the picture, yes, they form a new organism. So in hydra, the cell wall is made up of two layers of cells, has a mouth with tentacles. So at the mouth you can see the long tentacles, the nucleus starts dividing and moves into the bud. After some time, the bud detach itself from the parent body and start growing. At the last, you can see in the last picture, the bud is getting detached to form a new hydra. Yes, so here the asexual reproduction takes place by the mode that is budding in hydra. First of all, what happens to the parent hydra? Yes, it forms what? The cell divide to form a protrusion on the surface of the body. These protrusions are called buds. You can see in the picture, yes, small buds are forming. So these buds, they form a new organisms. Yes, with the tentacles you can see, as well as the nucleus starts dividing and moves into the bud. After some time, these buds, they detach itself from the parent body and start growing into a new individual. A new hydra starts to grow. So this is the asexual reproduction in animals. Now let us see the asexual reproduction in plants. So plants reproduce asexually by following methods. So first one, fragmentation. So we are talking about asexual reproduction in plants. So plants reproduce asexually. Let us see the first method, how the plants are getting reproduced. Yes, the first method is fragmentation. So here we have taken an example of Spirogyra. Yes, it takes place in algae as well. So let us see in Spirogyra, yes, how this fragmentation mode of asexual reproduction takes place. So what is this fragmentation? Here, yes, in which an entirely new organism is formed from a fragment of the parent. It also occurs in the multicellular organisms whose body organization is fairly simple, such as annelids, starfish, fungi, lichens, and some algae such as Spirogyra. So the filaments of Spirogyra, you can see they're long, elongated, yes, vertical. So these filaments of Spirogyra upon maturation break into small pieces of fragments which grow into new individual. Yes, in the first picture you can see there the Spirogyra which has a nucleus, septa, as well as you can see the spiral chloroplast. So this is a mature Spirogyra. So once they get matured, they divide. So here which occurs in the lower organisms. So this mature Spirogyra, it breaks into two or more fragments, and each of these fragments grow and form a new organism. You can see the one Spirogyra, as in the is with the arrow mark, they are showing into two Spirogyra. So the mature Spirogyra, it will break into two or more fragments, and each fragment grows and forms a new Spirogyra, that is new organism. So this process, this mode of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. Yes, so this fragmentation, it is the mode of asexual reproduction which occurs in some lower organism, as I said, as such in algae as well as Spirogyra. So we have seen in the picture, yes, this Spirogyra, how it is breaking down into two or more fragments, and each of these fragments grow and form a new organism. So here it occurs in the multicellular organism as well, whose body organization is fairly simple, such as annelids, yes, starfish, fungi, lichen. So at present we are talking about asexual reproduction in plants. We saw how it takes place through fragmentation. Second one, spore formation. Yes, through spore formation, how they are getting reproduced. Yes, so this method of asexual reproduction, which is found in non-flowering plants. Non-flowering plants such as fungi can take, which is called as rhizopus. In the diagram itself you can see the rhizopus, as well as bacteria. In this method of reproduction, the parent plant reproduces, yes, it will produce hundreds of tiny spores which can grow into new plants. So in the diagram you can see the rhizopus. At the top you can see small spore formation. So they produce a number of spores. So these spores, or you can say spirogyum, it will burst. These spores, they get dispersed into the air, yes, and they reproduce. They will grow into a new plant. So here the plant that do not have seeds, mostly they are non-flowering plants. They reproduce asexually by spore formation. Most commonly seen, that is rhizopus, as I am saying, or you can say mucor. In this method of reproduction, the parent plant produces hundreds of tiny spores which can grow into new plants. The spores are circular and can grow into a new plant under favorable condition. So these spores, once they are formed, yes, they store sac called spirogyum. In the diagram you can see, yes, they store in a sac called spirogyum. So this spirogyum bursts and the spores from each spirogyum get scattered by rain or wind and start developing into a new rhizopus plant under favorable condition. So what's happened here? Yes, so the spirogyia, as we have seen in the fragmentation process, now we are talking about spore formation in the rhizopus. So rhizopus, yes, it is a non-flowering plant. We do not have seeds here. So in this method, the parent plant produces hundreds of tiny spores which can grow into new plants. The spores are circular and can grow into a new plant under favorable condition. So this rhizopus, the spores are stored in a sac called spirogyum. The spirogyum bursts and the spore from each spirogyum gets scattered by rain or wind and start developing into a new rhizopus plant under favorable condition. Yes, hope you people are understanding how the asexual reproduction takes place in plants by fragmentation, spore formation. Next method is the vegetative propagation. So here, as it is asexual reproduction, only the vegetative parts take place. Yes, so what are the vegetative parts? That is leaves, stem and roots of a plant which give rise to a new plant. Yes, so vegetative propagation uses several of the plant parts for reproducing the plant asexually. So these reproductive parts, as I said, are not involved in this method. That is, this method is commonly observed in plants such as potatoes, rose, yes, bryophyllum, etc. So vegetative propagation can occur either naturally or can be done artificially. So let us see what is this natural vegetative propagation. Yes, so what is vegetative propagation? Here, yes, only the vegetative parts of a plant give rise to a new plant, as from leaves you take stem, roots. From here the particular, yes, a reproduction starts, which is called as vegetative propagation. Why vegetative propagation? Because it takes place from the vegetative parts. It starts producing from the vegetative parts. So reproductive parts of a plant are not involved in this. Only the vegetative parts are involved. This method is commonly observed in plants such as potatoes, rose, bryophyllum, etc. So this vegetative propagation can occur either by naturally or can be done artificially. So let us see natural vegetative propagation. Yes, natural vegetative propagation can take place in different vegetative parts of the plant. As I said, leaves, stem, roots. So let us see how it takes place by propagation by leaves. The natural vegetative propagation, yes, that is propagation by leaves. So in the plants like bryophyllum, we have taken the example bryophyllum, you can see in the picture, and begonia. So let us see bryophyllum. The buds are present on the leaf margins. You can see there, yes, on the margins the buds are present there. These buds, what happens, they fall onto the ground and they will give rise to a new plant. Yes, they will give rise to a new plant. So here on the margins of the leaves you can see the buds, and these buds fall on the ground and give rise to a new plants. Buds present in individual notches along the margin of the bryophyllum leaf are capable of forming new plants. So as I am saying, the buds are present on the leaf margins, but when these buds fall on the ground, they will give rise to a new plant. But buds present in these individual notches along with the margins of bryophyllum leaf are only capable of forming new plants. So this is natural vegetative propagation. Yes, the propagation by leaves. Now let us see propagation by roots. Yes, for example, you take sweet potato, dahlia, which give rise to a new plant from their fleshy roots. So, we saw about propagation by leaves. The next one is propagation by roots. So, roots also help in vegetative propagation. As I said, vegetative part like root, leaves. Yes. So, we saw regarding propagation by leaves. Now, let us see propagation by roots. So, roots also help in vegetative propagation. Example, you can take sweet potato, dahlia, give rise to a new plant from their fleshy roots. So, in the picture, you can see the root tubers fall on adventitious root. Yes, adventitious roots, stem. Next, propagation by stems. Yes, can you give an example for this? Propagation by stems. Yes, in the picture you can see potato. It is a tuber. So potato is a tuber that develops eyes and buds that give rise to a new plant. Yes, so propagation by stems. Underground stems that have been modified for storage of food help in vegetative propagation. So here what happens? As they are underground stems, they have been modified for storage of what? Food, which will help in the vegetative propagation. These stems have buds that give rise to new plants. Yes, you can see on the potato, yes, the eye, the shoot, but these buds, as they get formed, they rise into a new plant. So modified stems such as tuber, bulb, rhizome and corm help the plants to multiply. So propagation by stem, as I showed, the tuber. Example, potato. Next, yes, tuber, as I said, stem such as tuber. Next we'll see about bulb. Propagation by stem, tuber, we came to know about potato, how it is, yes, reproducing. Now let us see bulbs. Yes, for example, you take onion bulb. So here the bulbs are modified shoots with short stem, you can see, and apical and lateral buds. Apical buds produce leaves and flowers. Examples are onions and garlic. You can see the fleshy scale leaves, the apex. So here what happens? The bulbs are modified for shoot with the short stem and apical and lateral buds. Apical buds produce leaves and flowers. Examples are onions and garlic. So they get reproduced naturally, natural vegetation, yes, by modifying the stem such as bulb. Next is the rhizome. So rhizome is a stem that is thick and yes, fleshy. It has distinct nodes, internodes and axillary buds. You can see in the picture, these buds grow branches and develop into a new plant. Yes, these buds, once they grow branches and they develop into a new plant under favorable conditions. For example, you take ginger, turmeric, lotus. Yes, so this is a natural vegetative propagation by rhizome. That is rhizome, it is a stem. You can see in the rhizome, yes, it is thick, fleshy, has distinct nodes, internodes and axillary buds. So these buds, what happen? They grow into branches and they develop into new plants under favorable conditions. Example, you can take ginger, turmeric, lotus. Next, vegetation taking place by Corms. Corms are spherical structure. You can see here in the picture. They are formed in clusters around the swollen base of stem. Yes. So corms are spherical structures formed in clusters around the swollen base of stem. Buds arise from top of corm and roots arise from underside of it. You can see in the picture. Yes, so corms are spherical structures. They are formed in clusters, in groups around the swollen base of stem. You can see the swollen, yes, base of stem. So buds from where they arise? From top of the corm, and roots arise from underside of it. So in the picture you can see there scale leaf, node, corm. You can see the corm there, yes, and the daughter corm, how it is getting produced, how it is arising. Next one, runners. Vegetation, yes, vegetative propagation, that is by runners. The long stem of plant such as strawberry grows above the soil. These are called runner or stolon. The buds present on the runners grow into new plants. So you can see, yes, in the picture the propagation by runners, how from the particular, yes, roots the runner are getting into a small clone. So the long stems of plants such as strawberry grows above the soil. These are called runner or stolon. The buds present on the runners grow into a new plant. So these are the natural, yes, vegetative plants, how they are getting grown, that is by different propagation. So natural vegetative propagation can take place in different vegetative parts of the plant, in leaves, roots, stem, bulbs, rhizome, corms, runners. Yes, we'll stop up to here, and regarding the advantages and disadvantages, we'll take it in the next class, that is advantages of natural vegetative propagation as well as disadvantages and artificial vegetative propagation will continue in the next class. So today we studied about the reproduction. Yes, so what is the reproduction? The process by which organism produce new individual of their own kind is called reproduction. Then we studied about the modes of reproduction. Yes, asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, and asexual reproduction in animals by the mode that is budding and binary fission. In plants, spore formation, fragmentation, vegetative propagation. So we came to know about what is asexual reproduction. It is a process by which a single organism produces genetically identical offspring. So we saw regarding asexual reproduction taking place in amoeba by binary fission. Here what happens? The two equal sized daughter cells are formed from a single parent. These two daughter cells are identical to each other as well as, yes, to the parent cell. Next we saw about budding in hydra. Yes, also it takes place in yeast. So here asexual reproduction, how it takes place? The cell divide to form a protrusion on the surface of the body. These protrusions are called buds. So each bud forms a new organism. You can see in hydra the cell wall is made up of two layers of the cell and has a mouth with tentacles. The nucleus starts dividing and moves into the bud. After some time the bud detaches itself from the parent body and start growing into a new individual. This asexual reproduction in plants, first method is fragmentation. We have seen a mature spirogyra breaks into two or more fragments and each of these fragments grow and form a new organism. Next we saw about spore formation. Yes, here what happens, as it is asexual reproduction, yes, which is found in non-flowering plants such as fungi, rhizopus, bacteria. In this method the parent plant produces hundreds of tiny spores which can grow into new plants. So this spore stored in a sac called spirogeum. Then the spirogia burst and the spores from each spirogeum get scattered by rain or wind and start developing into a new rhizopus plant. Then we saw about vegetative propagation. Yes, in this method Yes, as it is a asexual reproduction, here only vegetative parts of a plant give rise to a new plant. Reproductive parts of a plant are not involved in this method. Yes, for example, you take potatoes, rose, bryophyllum. Yes, so in bryophyllum also you can see as the natural vegetation taking place. This natural vegetative propagation. So here what happens is at the margins you can see there is buds forming, leaf margin you can see. So these buds fall on the ground and give rise to a new plants. But the buds present in the individual notches along the margin of bryophyllum leaf are capable of forming new plants. Then we saw propagation by roots. For example, sweet potato, dahlia. They give rise to a new plant from their fleshy roots. Here the roots also help in vegetative propagation. Next, propagation by stem. Yes, these are the underground steps that have been modified for storage of food, help in vegetative propagation. So the stem, what happens? These stems have buds that give rise to new plants. Yes, modified stems such as tuber, bulb, rhizome and corm help the plant to multiply. Yes, through tuber you can see the modified stem tuber. For example, potato, you can say potato is a tuber that develops eyes and buds that give rise to a new plant. Yes, modified stems such as bulb, you can see bulb are modified shoots with a short stem and apical and lateral buds. Apical buds produce leaves and flowers. Then we saw the modified stem in rhizome. Yes, it is thick, fleshy, has distinct nodes, internodes, axillary buds. These buds grow branches and develop into a new plant. Example, ginger, turmeric and lotus. Next we saw about corms. These are spherical structures formed in clusters around the swollen base of stem. These buds arise from top of the corm. You can see there in the picture as the corm is forming, and roots arise from the underside. Last one is modified stems such as runners. These are the long stem of plants such as strawberry grows above the soil. These are called runner or stolon. The buds present on the runners grow into new plants. Yes, children. So I'll stop up to here. Yes, once the offline class starts, we'll clear the doubts. Yes, we'll revise it once more. Okay. Thank you.